you all, and welcome back to Living Unveiled with Maddie. Today we're going to be talking about fear and the quiet but significant shift that has taken place in church circles. This is one that is not always immediately visible, yet it deeply affects both individuals and entire communities. The fear of God has not disappeared really, rather it has been displaced, and in many cases it has been replaced by the fear of man. Scripture establishes this order clearly by saying that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Proverbs 9 verse 10. Now this is not a peripheral idea, it is foundational. If the beginning becomes distorted, everything built upon it, no matter how structured or sincere, will carry that distortion. The fear of God, rightly understood, is not terror. It is reverence and awareness of the weight, holiness, and complete difference between God and everything that is human and familiar. Because God is not like us. He does not think as we think, neither does he respond as we respond or operate within the limitations that define us. As scripture says in Isaiah 55 verse 8, my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways. To fear God is to recognize that he cannot be reduced to our preferences, our experience, or even our systems. This awareness produces reverence. Moses removed his sandals not because the ground itself had changed, but because he became aware of who was present. In Exodus 3:5, Isaiah declared, "Woe is me," when he saw the Lord, in Isaiah 6 verse 5. And John fell as though dead before Christ in Revelation 1 verse 17. These were not reactions of terror, but of clarity. God had been seen rightly. However, in many church contexts today, this reverence has not been removed, it has been replaced. The fear of man has taken its place. This fear is subtle. It rarely presents itself as intimidation. More often, it appears as honor, loyalty, or submission. Yet beneath these expressions, something has shifted. People have become more responsive to human voices than to the voice of God. The shift has real consequences. There are environments where individuals regulate their behavior more carefully around their leaders than around scripture. There are even instances within a marriage where a spouse responds more readily to the expectations of their leaders than to the voice of their own spouses. This is not simply a relational issue. It is a spiritual one, and it reveals that fear has been reordered. Scripture warns us in Proverbs 29 verse 25. It said, "The fear of man brings a snare." A snare is not an obvious restriction. It is a trap that operates subtly, often under the appearance of responsibility or devotion, gradually distorting judgment and limiting freedom. This pattern is not new. It is clearly seen in the life of Saul. In 1 Samuel 15, Saul is given a clear commandment from God. His failure is not immediate rebellion, but partial obedience, because he had just what was given to him. When confronted, he reveals the root of the issue in 1 Samuel 15:24. He said, I feared the people and obeyed their voice. That statement captures the exchange. When the voice of people carries more weight than the voice of God, obedience becomes negotiable. Misdirected fear does not remain neutral. If left unexamined, it matures into pride. And this pride is not always loud or obvious. It is the kind that resists correction, protects established patterns, and justifies itself. Within church circles, this often appears in the elevation of longevity into authority. Time becomes a substitute for alignment. Familiarity with systems is mistaken for sensitivity to God. Statements such as, "We have always done it this way," "I have been here long enough," or "This is how God moves," gradually shift from observation to defense. As a result, when a new movement of God begins to emerge, it is not always received. It is resisted. What is being protected is not always truth, but position. This is not without precedent. The Pharisees were deeply trained, they were disciplined, and they were very established. Yet when Christ came, they resisted him. Not because they lacked knowledge, but because they were unwilling to yield their position. They could not hand over the baton because doing so would require acknowledging that God was moving in a way that did not center around them. This is the danger of pride that has matured over time. It creates the illusion that God can be contained, predicted, or managed within established structure. But God has never operated within the limits of human system. He moves according to his will, and his movements requires sensitivity, not seniority. The consequences of this condition is sobering. It is possible for activity to continue even when alignment has been lost. Samson represents this clearly. He did not know that the Lord had left him in Judges 16 verse 20. The tragedy is not only that the Lord had departed, but that Samson lacked the awareness to recognize it. Familiarity with past encounters had replaced present sensitivity. And this raises necessary questions, particularly for leadership. Have we intentionally or unintentionally cultivated environments where people fear us more than they fear God? Have we mistaken control for order? Have we encouraged dependence on our voice at the expense of sensitivity to his own voice? Leadership was never meant to replace God in the lives of people. It was meant to point them to God. At the same time, those within such environment must ask themselves, do we fear our leaders more than we fear God? Because when decisions are shaped primarily by human expectations rather than divine conviction, misalignment has already begun. This is not a call to reject leadership. Scripture affirms honor and order. However, honor without discernment becomes idolatry, and submission without truth becomes bondage. For this reason, it is essential that every believer knows God for themselves, not in a way that rejects community, but in a way that is rooted in a personal relationship. Jesus said in John 10:27, "My sheep hear my voice." This implies that spiritual maturity includes the ability to recognize and respond to God directly. Now, leadership can guide, but it cannot replace this. There will be moments when what is expected and what is true do not align. In those moments, second-hand conviction will not be sufficient. Now, as we prepare for the coming of Christ, this is not merely a theological discussion. It is a call to sit and examine. Have we replaced reverence with familiarity? Have we allowed the fear of man to occupy the place that belongs to the fear of God? Or have we built systems that protect position more than presence? Because in the end, longevity will not sustain us. Structure will not sustain us. Reputation will not sustain us. Only a restored fear of the Lord will. The fear of the Lord is still the beginning, as it has always been, and it is the only thing that will keep us properly aligned with God. Until next time, stay unveiled.